Hi there, I'm here to explain how to play 7 Secret Supervillains in a quick and easy to understand way. 7 Secret Supervillains is a turn-based deck builder and deck deconstructor. The base version of the game is 2 players, but the expansions can bring it up to 4. For the purposes of this video, let's talk about the 2-player game. First up, let's jump into the objective. So in this game, there are of course 7 Secret Supervillains, like the name of the game, and you win by getting exactly 4 of them, which could be this 4, or even this 4. It does not matter. You get 4, you win. Now let's move on to the setup. First up, let's start with these types of cards. There are 2 supercomputers that are the exact same thing, only the art is different, so pick your favorite. Next up, there are 16 tiny bot cards. Each player gets 8 for their starting deck, and 4 junkie bot cards. Each player gets 2 for their starting deck, so each player is going to have 10 cards for their starting deck, shuffle those up, and draw 5 each. Next up, there is 1 exploding bot card in the game. The player who goes second, determine that however you want, gets that card. So, no fighting, just flip a coin or something. Moving on, let's talk about the supervillain crews. There are 77 cards in total. 7 of those are going to be supervillains themselves, and there are 1 of each color. There are also 7 upgrade cards, 1 for each ability of the supervillain crews. And then there are 63 minion cards, that's 9 minions per each supervillain crew, and each has a different amount of reputation, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. Regardless, shuffle these 3 separate types of cards into 3 separate decks. So 1 deck for the supervillains, 1 deck for the upgrades, and 1 for the minions. And the final card for the base game is going to be the Scaredy Bot, and there are 10 of those cards, and those you really don't have to shuffle at all. Regardless, you are going to place all of these cards exactly where I show you right now, except don't just reveal the exact same cards, reveal random ones because again, you're shuffling. So let's break down the setup of the game right now. At the center of the table, we've got the supervillain deck, and we've got 3 random supervillains revealed. And then there's the area for player 1 with their supercomputer, their starting deck, and their 5-card hand. Though those 5 cards are just showing up on the screen, they will not be revealed to their opponent. The area on the top is where player 2 is, and it's the other supercomputer, their starting deck, their 5-card hand, which again will not be revealed, but the Explodey Bot, sure, that can be revealed because everyone knows the second player gets the Explodey Bot. Next up on the side of the table, we've got the minion deck, and in front of it, 5 random minion cards revealed. And then there's the upgrade deck, and in front of that, 1 random upgrade card revealed. And then next to the revealed upgrade, we've got the pile of Scaredy Bots placed face up. So now that you're an expert on the setup of the game, let's play! Or maybe, first we should learn how the actual cards work. That might be helpful. Let's do that. So now let's make you an expert on the card layout. So to do that, let's take a look at a minion card with Burrito. Isn't it adorable? Regardless, let's break things down. First up, starting off with the top right corner, we've got the health of a minion card, which is basically its cost. So Burrito costs 5 to buy. In order to buy things, you need power, and we can see this card's power on the left side of the card, which is going to be 2 power. And next, and maybe most obviously, we've got the name of the card, which of course is Burrito. Again, very clever, right? Next up, this block of text is going to be the card's ability, in this case, Freeze, and it tells you exactly what that ability does. In this case, take the top card of your deck and add it to your hand next turn. Regardless, when you choose to play a card with an ability, you get to use the ability and the power separately, meaning that you can choose to use the power or the ability first and the other later when you need it. You can even choose not to use the power or the ability of the card. However, when you choose to use either, the card is considered played and is no longer in your hand. Each of the crews have different abilities with their text written out as well. Speaking of crews, you can see which crew that this card belongs to by looking at either the icons in the bottom corners. Burrito is part of the Freezer Burn crew, and their icon is an ice cube. Also at the bottom of the card, we've got the minion card's reputation, which in this case is 5. Essentially, reputation are points that you can put towards winning the corresponding supervillain. Minion cards range in reputation between 1 and 9, and we'll go more in depth on how all that works later. And finally, you can tell what set or expansion a card is from by looking at the line in each of the corners. The solid white line indicates that this is a card from the base set. Okay, so now we're done talking about the layout of, okay, wait, never mind. We need to talk about the upgrades really quick because there are some slight differences. So as you can see, the card layout for the upgrades is mainly the same. First up, you can see that the health of the card, well, is quite a lot at 10 up in the top right corner, but is in the exact same spot. And the handy dandy set and expansion lines are of course in the exact same spot as well. Now, unlike minion cards, you get the upgrades ability every single turn once you get it into play. And in this case, it is the Incinerate upgrade, which means that you can expel one card in your hand or discard pile, which basically means remove from the game permanently. And finally, at the bottom of the card, we actually just have the upgrade name, which is just a cleaner way to see it when we actually have it on the board. We'll see how we actually display it later. So now that everyone's an expert on the layout of the cards, let's play. To do that, let's talk about how a turn works. So again, earlier we drew our 5 cards, and let's just pretend that we drew these 5. Again, it's going to be a combination of tiny bots and or junky bots, and this is your typical draw. So since you all are experts on card layout, you know that the tiny bots have 1 power and the junky bots have 0 power, meaning that, well, we've got 4 power. So what should we buy? Well, let's take a look at the row, and again, we've got 7 different cards to pick from, though only some of them are options right now. So let's break those down. First up, Scaredy Bot. Yes, Scaredy Bot is almost always an option for us. They each have a cost of 2, so they are pretty affordable, but there are only 10 of them, so once they run out, they're gone. Next up, let's take a look at the upgrades, which are an option later. Early game, you're not going to be able to buy these because they each have a very high cost. Incinerate upgrade, for example, costs 10. So let's move on to our minion row, and that gives us a variety of options. The random 5 that I revealed were these 5, and well, our options are cut down a little bit because again, we're early in the game, we only have 4 power. So ultimately, let's decide to buy the Mecha Waffler, and now we can't buy the Bounty Hunter Croak. Now, when you do buy a card though, you immediately replace it, so right away you have another potential option to buy. Now, unfortunately, the card that is revealed is Tormelian Timothy, which costs 3, so we cannot afford that either. That being said, we still have 2 power left, so what should we do with it? If you said Scaredy Bot, you're right! Scaredy Bots are always a great option early game if you run out of choices, and actually late game, we'll talk about this later, but they can be powerhouses. But now that you're out of power and out of cards, what do? How do we end our turn? So to do that, let's move on to the cleanup. Here is the combination of cards that we played with the 4 tiny bots and the junky bot, and the cards that we bought with the Mecha Waffler and the Scaredy Bot. At the cleanup, we are going to be putting all of them into our discard pile. We do not put any in our discard pile before the cleanup stage. So when you play a card or when you buy a card, just put it off to the side until the end of the turn. Our discard pile is on the left side of our deck, so let's just put all those cards there. Next in the cleanup stage, let's draw 5 cards, and if we don't have 5 cards to draw, we draw what we can and then draw the difference after we shuffle our discard pile to make a new deck. If your deck runs out and you need to draw, or if because of an ability you need a deck, just shuffle your discard pile and that's your new deck. Next up in the cleanup though, let's say hypothetically on a future turn, we bought the Bounty upgrade. Now instead of putting this card in our discard pile at the end of the turn in the cleanup, we put it underneath our supercomputer. This shows that every single turn we can utilize the Bounty ability that is granted to our supercomputer, and our supercomputer can have a maximum of 3 upgrades attached to it. But now that we talked about the cleanup, let's move on to the goal of the game. Again, like I mentioned, this game revolves around the 7 secret supervillains and winning 4 of the 7. So let's just pretend that these are the 3 supervillains revealed, and then let's pretend for our hand that we've got this hand as an example. Now when it comes to minion cards, you have a choice. You can either play the card to get its power and ability, or choose to attach the minion card to its corresponding supervillain. So looking back at our supervillain row, we decide to attach our Great Dane card as well as our Tormelian Tipton card to their corresponding supervillains. You can only attach minion cards to supervillains that are revealed. And speaking of supervillains, let's stop right here and talk about the Danger Zone. So to the opposite side of the supervillain deck, there is the area called the Danger Zone. Once a supervillain has between 10 and 16 reputation dedicated to it from one player, it moves to the Danger Zone. The supervillain is not won yet, but it is close, and it also reveals another supervillain in the place that it left. That being said, aside from attaching minion cards from your hand, you also have one other option, and that is the Scaredy Bot, which can have some game-changing plays. A reminder, this is the Scaredy Bot card. It might not seem like much, again, just costs 2, gives you 2 power, but it does have the transfer ability. And that ability says you may expel this card to attach up to 1 card from your discard pile to its supervillain. So when you need to, remember to transfer it. And a quick reminder that the power and abilities are separate separate on cards, so you still get the power from the scaredy bot, so have fun with that 2 power when you transfer. So in this example, let's pretend that we've got King Cobra in our discard pile, which is a Royal Rule minion card with 7 reputation. So by transferring the King Cobra, which again had 7 reputation, we get to 17 reputation attached to the Royal Rule supervillain, and we win that supervillain. When that happens, we take the supervillain and every single card attached to it, including our opponent's cards, and we put it in front of us to indicate that we won that villain. Also, if the supervillain is not in the danger zone when it is won, make sure you replace it with another supervillain. Again, the goal is to win 4 of these 7 secret supervillains, and it can take a variety of cards to get there. But just know that when you do get those 4 supervillains, you win, and you are the greatest player of all time. So make sure your opponents know that, and make sure that you know that for the full list of rules, clarifications, and explanations, go to sssvgames.com. So thanks for learning the rules with me, and have a blast playing 7 secret supervillains.